Once upon a time, in a small village nestled between rolling hills and lush green forests, there lived a young woman named Isabella. Isabella was known throughout the village for her kindness and generosity. She had a heart as warm as the summer sun, and she was always ready to lend a helping hand to anyone in need. Isabella lived in a cozy cottage on the outskirts of the village. Her days were spent tending to her garden, which bloomed with vibrant flowers of every color imaginable. She had a special talent for growing the most beautiful roses, and her garden was a sight to behold. People from all over the village would come to visit her garden and be filled with awe and wonder at the breathtaking beauty it held. But it wasn't just Isabella's garden that made her beloved in the village. She had a way of making everyone she met feel special. If someone was feeling down, she would visit them with a basket of freshly baked bread and a kind word. If a neighbor was ill, she would bring them soothing herbal teas and offer to watch over them until they felt better. Isabella's generosity knew no bounds, and she was adored by young and old alike. One chilly autumn evening, as the leaves on the trees turned to brilliant shades of red and gold, a weary traveler named Henry arrived in the village. He was a man of few words and a troubled past. Henry had been wandering from place to place, carrying a heavy burden of sadness and regret. He had heard rumors of Isabella's kindness and hoped that perhaps in this little village, he could find solace and redemption. Henry approached Isabella's cottage and knocked softly on the door. Isabella, with her warm smile, greeted him and invited him inside. She offered him a hot cup of tea and a place by the cozy fireplace. Henry hesitated for a moment but then accepted her offer. As the days turned into weeks, Henry found himself drawn to Isabella's garden. He had never seen such beauty before, and he was captivated by the vibrant colors and the delicate fragrance of the roses. Isabella noticed Henry's interest and invited him to help her tend to the garden. At first, he was reluctant, but as he spent more time with Isabella, he began to open up. One evening, as they were working side by side in the garden, Henry finally shared his story with Isabella. He had made mistakes in his past, hurt people he cared about, and he was carrying the weight of his actions like a heavy chain around his heart. Isabella listened with compassion and told him that it was never too late to make amends and start anew. With Isabella's encouragement, Henry decided to stay in the village and work alongside her in the garden. He learned the art of tending to the roses, and together they nurtured the garden into an even more magnificent place of beauty and tranquility. Henry also began to follow Isabella's example of kindness and generosity, helping others in the village and making amends for his past mistakes. As the years passed, Henry's heart gradually healed, and the darkness that had clouded his soul began to lift. He became a beloved member of the village, just like Isabella. The villagers marveled at the transformation they witnessed in Henry, from a weary traveler burdened with regrets to a kind and caring friend to all. One spring morning, as the sun bathed the village in a warm, golden light, Isabella called Henry over to a special section of the garden. She pointed to a rare, white rose that had just begun to bloom. It was the most beautiful rose either of them had ever seen, with petals as soft as silk and a fragrance that was pure and heavenly. "Henry," Isabella said, her eyes shimmering with tears of joy, "this rose is a symbol of your transformation and the beauty that has blossomed within your heart. Just like this rose, you have become a beacon of light and hope in our village." Henry was deeply moved. He realized that he had received far more from the village and Isabella than he had ever given. The love and kindness he had experienced had transformed his life, and he was forever grateful. The years continued to pass, and Isabella and Henry's friendship grew stronger with each passing day. They were inseparable, and their love for one another deepened into a bond that transcended words. Together, they continued to care for the garden, and the village thrived in the presence of their love and generosity. One winter's night, a fierce snowstorm descended upon the village. The wind howled, and the snow piled up, blocking the roads and cutting off the village from the outside world. The villagers were in dire need of food and supplies, and there was no way to reach the nearest town. Isabella and Henry knew they had to do something to help their neighbors. They bundled up in warm coats and set out into the storm. With a sled loaded with food and supplies, they trudged through the snowdrifts, their determination and love for the village driving them forward. After a long and arduous journey, they finally reached the neighboring town and gathered the supplies they needed. They knew they would have to make the journey back to the village through the storm once again, but they did so without hesitation. As they returned to the village, they were greeted with tears of gratitude from their neighbors. Isabella and Henry had risked their own safety to ensure that no one in the village would go hungry or cold during the storm. Their selflessness and love for the community were a shining example of the proverb, the power of giving. The years passed, and Isabella and Henry continued to live a life filled with love, kindness, and generosity. The village prospered, and their garden remained a place of beauty and solace for all who visited. But the greatest gift of all was the love they shared with each other and the village they had come to call home. In the end, Isabella and Henry proved that the proverb "the power of giving" was true in every sense. Their unwavering kindness and generosity had not only transformed their own lives but had also enriched the lives of everyone in the village. And as they walked hand in hand through the garden they had cultivated together, they knew that the love they had given had come back to them 1,000-fold, filling their hearts with a deep and abiding joy that would last a lifetime.